Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 4.
Well, I'm Alan Dale from Gale Force Wins, and I want to tell you what an absolute pleasure it is to be here in conversation with people that are really making a difference. I love talking to people that are constantly on the move and, making our country, our province, a better place to be. I'm Alan Dale. My good buddy, as always, Gerry Carew. We are Gale Force Wins. And Gerry, what do you think?
Well, I just want to say something. Last time I had this gentleman on video was 1999 at the Terra Nova Golf Resort. So it's a pleasure to have you back.
And my golf game was horrible.
Was it a bad golf game?
So
terrible. Chuck, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Chuck Furey. I'm glad to be home in St. John's. I just landed a few minutes ago. As you guys know, but your viewers probably don't know, I was a minister in the Wells government from 1989 to 2000, which crossed over Premier Wells and Premier Tobin. I had the great honor and the great privilege of being Minister of Economic Development, Minister of Tourism, Minister of Energy, Minister of Industry. I had a lot of ministries during that 16-year period, but it was a great joy in my life, and it was wonderful to serve the province.
Chuck, what was your upbringing like? Where did you come from? Right in St. John's, probably?
Yes, I
Big
did.
Family?
Yes, I grew up in St. John's. I come from a family of 8. My mother always taught us the B's, which were be honest, be kind, be respectful, be joyful, and be happy. So she always instilled that into us. I'm the youngest of 8. The oldest was my sister Rosalita, who was a nun who served in the school system at Holy Heart for many years. My brother George was the Speaker of the Senate for 15 years, and he served his country well. I have a sister who was a banker, another one who worked at the School for the Deaf. My brother was an innovator and a business person, and my other brother was head of the Film Corporation and a professor of English language and a writer now. He's just completed his second book, which will probably be made into a movie soon, called The Good Thief.
What's his name?
Leo.
Right.
Leo.
Yeah.
So we come from a strong, artistic, and driven family, and that really is nurtured back to our mother, who ruled with a strong fist, put us on the right paths, made sure we did things correctly, always ensured that we had good educations, good solid foundations. So we never had a lot, but she gave us plenty.
Chuck, I mean, it sounds like as the youngest in the mix there, you had a front row seat. A lot of people doing a lot of different things, right? And making a big. Tell me about that. What was family life like?
It was very encouraging. I grew up in a family that always encouraged. My brother Leo was a terrific actor. We went to Gonzaga High School here in St. John's, and year after year they would put on this Shakespearean play, and Leo would. He was so good. They'd always give him the lead roles, and he was terrific. He'd win the Best Actor award easily every year for the city. So he inspired in us a sense of confidence that if you get up and you know your subject, you can really speak well about it. My brother George was terrific too. He always guided us with a nice steely fist because he led the way through university. He was the first. With my sister Rose to go to university and teach us that there was a path beyond high school into the world of commerce and arts, etc. So it was fun growing up. It was lovely, and these were fun people to call my brothers and sisters, I must say.
What was the call to politics? When did that pull on you?
Well, it's interesting. I was teaching high school. I was teaching literature actually and history in Stephenville Crossing, of all places, which was a terrific school, Assumption High School.
Is that where you grew up?
No, that's not where I grew up. I grew up in the city, in St. John's, but I gravitated and migrated to the west coast of Newfoundland. I've always had a soft spot for it. It's beautiful. Not that St. John's is not beautiful.
Better weather.
Yeah, better weather. But I ended up, my very first job was in Conch, teaching for a year, and then I was recruited to teach at Assumption High School in Stephenville Crossing, and there we set up a drama club. We won the Premier's Cup for a number of plays that we did. We did extremely well. I loved teaching. I loved being in front of kids. I loved getting them involved, seeing the light come on in their eyes as they understood concepts. So teaching led me, into other things. And then I met this young, brand new MP who was just elected. He had just beaten Fons Fowler, who was a graduate of St. Francis Xavier University, same as my university. And it was Brian Tobin. He was a young member of Parliament at the time. He came to one of my plays. He pulled me aside after and said, I need your talent in Ottawa. I was thrilled. And I said, do I stay teaching? Do I go the safe route?
How old were you?
I was 29, I think, or
That's young.
28.
Yeah.
And do I go down the road not taken, or do I stay in the nice, safe sinecure of teaching with a nice pension, and I know I work from 9 to 5? And I said, I'm young enough. I'm going to jump, and the net will catch me. So I jumped. I went to Ottawa. I worked for him and Pierre Trudeau's government at the time.
Wow.
Welcome to the 80s. And so for those 4 years, I was there working. And then Mr. Peckford called an election. Leo Barry at the time was the leader of the Liberal Party. And Tobin looked at me and said, we need a body. Because, it was tough getting people to run for these seats. He said, here are 2 seats, Stephenville, St. Barb. St. Barb was along the Great Northern Peninsula. I'd taught up there. I knew a lot of people. But equally in Stephenville, where Stephenville Crossing is as well, I knew a lot of people there as well. So young Kevin Aylward at the time said, I'll take Stephenville. You go north, young man. So off I went north, and there was like 40 communities, and I knocked on every single door in the winter. Wow. And I ended up, there were 52 seats in the legislature at that time. I was declared the last seat at 2 o'clock in the morning by 14 votes.
Oh my goodness.
And I had already had my ticket to return to Ottawa. I wasn't going to get elected. Right. Why would they elect me?
Yeah.
No experience, but they elected me. And then they elected me 5 more times. So
I think I want to go back a little
Interesting.
bit. It's amazing. I want to go back a little bit. Brian Tobin, what was it like?
Brian Tobin, I have to say, he's one of the most incredible communicators I've ever encountered. Now, he reminds me a lot of Jameson. I remember as a young kid watching Don Jameson. Now, Jameson worked at NTV, and he had this famous thing about him that he would stand up and read the news straight for an hour.
News cavalcade, was that what it was
Without
called?
a note.
Yeah.
With not one note in front of him. So he had this electric ability to take you in through the screen, listen to him with this baritone, beautiful voice, capture the world news. That's right, News Cavalcade it was called. And he had a photographic memory, obviously, because how could you stand there for an hour and recite the news so precisely, so beautifully, and in such a beautiful rhythm?
Yeah.
And so when Jameson got elected, I always watched him from the distance, and I attended a number of his speeches. I was at a speech one time in Marystown, and he stood up and he had people laughing 1 minute, crying the next minute, on their feet in an ovation the next minute, and they carried him out of the hall. He was just extraordinary. Just extraordinary. How could you form people across so many emotions so quickly in such a short period of time? It's the energy that he brought out. It's the beauty that he brought out. It was the concern and the love of place that he brought out. He was extraordinary. So when I think of Brian Tobin, Tobin learned at the knee of Jameson.
Okay.
And Tobin could get up and give a speech in a minute's notice on just about any topic and transfix the hall. I watched it.
Amazing.
I was his assistant. We would drive through rain and sleet and hail to get to these cold suppers at development associations and fishing communities. And I watched him, and that's where I learned kind of how, if you tell the truth and you tell it in a good way, people will gravitate to you. And they gravitated to Tobin. He was extraordinary. When he'd stand in the House of Commons, people paid attention. Remember, when Mulroney swept the country, Tobin won a seat. Mm-hmm. And he became part of that famous Rat Pack.
Right.
And when Mulroney, when they would stand to ask questions, in particular Tobin, because he had his research, he always had concrete under his feet. He knew what he was going to say and when he was going to say it. Mulroney told me years later, because he and I went to St. FX and during that whole Meech Lake Accord with Clyde, et cetera, but I befriended Mulroney. He told me later, he said, I used to dread when Brian Tobin would get up because I knew there was a cannon coming across the house, right? And there always was. And George Baker equally was quite a great communicator, So Newfoundland has produced, we're a storytelling nation. Mm-hmm. We love to express ourselves. We're tactile, we're energetic. And all of that, when you roll it into politics and put it on the national stage, we are a force to be reckoned with. Yeah. Look at Crosby, look at Tobin, look at Jameson, look at the greats we've sent there. Extraordinary people.
Yeah. You see, you get elected, I don't want to say quite by accident, but 14 votes, right? And you get elected. Tell me about how your life changes then, right? Because it's one thing to be teaching in a classroom. Hard work, right? Very hard work. Being a teacher, a very important work, right? But this is a whole other level we're talking about now. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was different. Your life changes overnight, right? Because now you've become a public figure. You're owned now. You're no longer you. You can't go out to the drugstore and pick up something and have the privacy and personal life that you always had. My first question in question period, I'll never forget it. Peckford shouted across at me, "Landslide fury," because I'd only won by 14 votes. And Peckford was funny, you know. He and I got along great. He was very funny. And he had a great sense of humor, and he was a great politician, Peckford was, you know, until he got himself strung up by the cucumbers. He would have gone out on a very high note as one of the great communicators of the province too. And again, it goes back to storytelling. He was a teacher, et cetera, et cetera. So transferring from private life to public life, so you go to that same drugstore as MHA, everybody's on you. You didn't get my unemployment. What about this? The fishery, where's the quota? There's no private life. You're constantly under the gun. You're constantly, as you and I chatted earlier, Gerry, about the media at the time was a gotcha media. Yeah. They wanted to get you in trouble. They wanted to find things bad about you. They wanted to turn over every stone to create a scandal, to create a fuss, to sell their papers, to sell their media. So I don't think I'd ever survive in this new social media world, because when a fisherman, for example, sent me a letter about his boat, it took a week to get to me. I had a week to think about it. I had some people I could talk to. Then I could give him back an earnest and serious response, which went back out in the mail to him. And then when I'd see him in person in Port au Choix or wherever, we would talk about that.
Emotions would be gone, right?
But now you're in a lightning fast speed of light world of, if I put it on Facebook, you better answer it immediately. Yeah. And I don't think I could survive in that fast paced, dehumanized kind of world, you know?
Chuck, you would have had a front row seat as you listed off your ministries to a lot of things, a lot of conversations.
I did, and don't forget, I was Minister of Economic Development, sworn in 1989, April, and 2 years later, Mr. Crosby rose in the House of Commons and closed the entire fishery. So overnight, here I am as the Minister of Economic Development, whose mandate it is to generate jobs and stimulate the economy and find new ways for growth. Here we have 50,000 people laid off overnight. And the trigger and domino effect across the trucking industry, the restaurants, the hotels, et cetera. It had a massive hit to the economy, equal to the auto industry of Ontario if it closed overnight. Right. And so we had to deal with that. And so we had to come with programs through the feds and province. We had to keep people alive, keep their hopes alive, try to rebuild the economy. We put a lot of emphasis on tourism, IT. We were trying to get up around the curve on IT to really build up the places. So I think we did a lot of good stuff under very difficult circumstances. And it was the first time under Wells that we truly balanced the budget in many, many years, right?
Chuck, you know, and not a lot of people would get the opportunity to speak to a minister who held so many portfolios yourself. What's a day in the life of a minister of government look like?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy because you're given a schedule. And you've got all these people who are saying, you've got to meet this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I remember they used to give me this yellow piece of paper every day. It was a beautiful Microsoft calendar that had the daily events on it. And it was plugged in. They used to start me at 7 in the morning. And I had to tell them, you got to slow down. This is just too crazy for me, right? Oh, no, you got a breakfast meeting. You got to be at Jag Hotel, or you got to be at Hotel Newfoundland, or you got to be down at, you know, wherever. At 7, I said, no, I can't keep this pace up. I know I'm young and I'm healthy at the time, but I just can't keep this pace up. So it would go till, sometimes dinners would go as late as 9 or 10 at night. And then I'd go home, and every Wednesday night, I'd have this big, thick briefing book for cabinet. And I'd have to read all this and show up for cabinet every Thursday at 10, including my own papers, from my own portfolios that I would have to present and argue for. So, and then you're on planes. I was the Minister of economic development. I had to promote the province all over the world, China, Taiwan, Chile, all over the world. And so you meet these interesting people and you meet interesting leaders, and but it was, for me, it was a privilege. It was fun, it was a privilege, it was a joy, and I hope we left behind some good, solid foundations. I think we did.
Yeah, I mean, it's service at the highest level. I mean, it's unbelievable. You're giving your entire life to the province for the duration of the time that you're serving. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and thank you for saying that. You don't get many thank yous in public life, as my nephew is learning now, and he's the premier of the province. I'm extremely proud of him. It's my brother George's son, who was the Speaker of the Senate for 15 years. And he often says to me, it's a great privilege, but it's a thankless job. Premier Peckford said that to me. Other premiers have said that to me. Other ministers have said it to me. But every now and then, you'll get a thank you, and it's a really genuine, beautiful thank you. Yeah. It might be at a door, it might be at a hospital, it might be in a corridor, it might be in a supermarket, but somebody will actually stop and say, Chuck, thanks for that. Yeah. That meant a lot to me.
Makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it?
It lifts you, and it propels you forward, and it keeps you going,
I think what a lot of people don't realize, you just gave us a look under the hood.
Yeah.
7 a.m. till 9, 10, and then you got how many pages of briefing notes?
Well, so in my time, there were 14 cabinet ministers, so 14 ministers would submit papers, some one, some two, some none, some weeks. But it would be quite a stack of paper. I remember I had to give a 3-hour presentation at Cabinet one morning after a long evening with Mayor Wells, myself, and a delegation from overseas. And it was about setting up enterprise Newfoundland and Labrador. So I had to get up in front of all these ministers, whacked from being up all day, and present this 120-page document of setting up all of these new economic engines for the province. So it was tough, but I managed to slog it through, and we got it up, and we got it running. Well,
you say you're proud of Premier Furey, and we are too. We've had the Premier on a number of times, and doing incredible work, and not only that, but not only his political life, but his medical career too, keeping that alive, and I mean, really leaning into this province in a way that is to be truly celebrated. No matter which way you vote, this guy is doing it all, and we certainly appreciate it.
Yeah,
right?
and you said that because, as people used to say about Premier Wells, and I really enjoyed working with Clyde Wells, he was an absolute superstar of a human being. Quiet, reserved, earnest, and honest. He was everything you could ever ask for in a true leader. And people used to say to me, conservatives, because I was a liberal at the time, a blue liberal, mind you, but I was a liberal. People used to say to me at the doors, I'll tell you what, Mr. Furey, I don't like what Clyde Wells said, and I'd never vote for him, but by God, I respect him. And what they were really saying is, he was decisive. He took the hard decisions. He stood the pain of the public. And you remember the second election Clyde ran in. His comment when he stood at the podium was, do we run the government or did the teachers run the government? Because the teachers were threatening strikes. And so we called an election. And he came back with a greater mandate.
Right.
Because people respected him. He took the hard decisions. They weren't pleasant, they weren't nice, they hurt some people, they hurt indirectly some people, and directly. But he had to take the decisions, or as he used to say, we're going back to commission of government, and I will never take you there under my leadership. And we went bankrupt, as you recall. We surrendered our right to govern. We gave it up because we couldn't govern ourselves. And we brought in a commission from Canada and London to govern us and get us out of our debt and out of our malaise. He said, I'll never do that. So get ready for some tough decisions. There were many pickets, many protests. Clyde lied. You'll remember all this.
Oh, yeah.
But he stood firm.
Yeah.
And he took the province in the right direction. So love him or hate him.
Right.
You always respect him.
Yeah. And it's funny, history looks at things differently, and people rise to the occasion. I'm so glad that you articulated it that way. Life after politics, where did it take you then?
It took me all over the world. My wife is a doctor. She practices in Ottawa. So at the time when I resigned, I decided that she had said to me, I'm a cardiology nurse, I'd like to go to medical school. Capacity issues were very important at the time. I think there were 50 seats at Memorial at the time. She only applied to one university, and she was a cardiology nurse, a scholar in her own right, had won the gold medal for nursing, etc. So she was quite scholarly.
Here's an overachiever.
Yeah, she is quite something, I have to say. I don't say that because she's my wife, I say that because it's true. And she looked at me one day and said, you know, there is another path. It's through the Caribbean. And there are some terrific medical schools in the Caribbean. She put in her application one week, was accepted the next week, was in her desk the week later, went through 4 years, did her internal medicine at Yale in New Haven, Connecticut. The guy liked her so much, he offered her a pre-match. You have to match in residency to do a specialty. And he said, come, do it at Yale. And she said, no, I'm from Newfoundland and Labrador. And I'm from Canada, and I'm a homing pigeon. I want to take everything I've learned and bring it home. So there were 2 spots in neurology for the entire country, hundreds and hundreds of applications all over the world. And she won the one at the University of Ottawa, where she trained for 5 years, became a specialist in headache management, and in particular migraines. She's the queen of headaches. I tell her I'm her biggest headache. But she's amazing. She has a 2-year wait list. She sees people there are people from Newfoundland that fly up to see her. And she's corrected their migraines and fixed them and put them on a good, healthy path. So I followed her to the Caribbean. I learned to clean, to cook, to be her support system. She followed my trap line. It was time for me to follow her trap line.
Okay, so
I got out of everything. I got off the treadmill, off the craziness, out of the public light. It was the healthiest I've ever been. I swam every day. I ate beautiful fresh fruits and great foods. I walked. I read a lot. I wrote a lot. And I always cooked for her and cleaned for her and picked her up and stayed with her for many nights as she studied late into the night.
It's amazing.
And she excelled. She did amazing on all. Remember, because she's from outside Canada, she had to write 2 sets of exams. She had to write a series of exams for the US, which she passed with flying colors. Then she equally had to write a series of exams for Canada, which she passed with flying colors. So her options were incredible when she finished. But she chose Canada. She loves this country, loves her province, and loves the people. So she's actually looking to do some locums to come back and give her services to the Northern Peninsula where she grew up.
So you shut down from politics and went to the Caribbean pretty well.
Straight to the Caribbean.
Wow. That's amazing.
We rented our house. We flew down there. I packed some shorts and t-shirts, books, and cookbooks. I learned how to cook.
2 weeks in, were you like, oh, I wish I had someone from, the Northern Peninsula calling me?
Of course. Well, when you get off when you get off this roller coaster, she used to say to me, your phone is so quiet. I remember in those days it was fax machines. There's no faxes coming. My house was a zoo of phones and faxes and never eat supper on time and crazy, crazy, crazy. But the day that I resigned, it died. It just all went away.
Wow.
And some people talk a little bit about it and how they recover from it. For me, it was transferring all that energy and all those dreams into her dreams now. And off I went. I had something else to do. Before we went south to the Caribbean, we flew to Spain and we walked the Santiago de Compostela Trail, the last quarter of it. And it's called the Pilgrim's Trail. So we just took t-shirts, our knapsacks, some hiking boots, and we walked. It was a beautiful spiritual walk. Not religious, but spiritual.
Right.
And we'd stop in little Spanish towns, and after 10 hours of walking or 8 hours of walking, have a beer, find a place to rest, have some food in the morning, and start again. It was the most magnificent. If you ever get a chance to do it, it's one of those gems in life that you really ought to do. It's called the Santiago de Compostela Trail. Friends of mine have done the entire thing after we told them the experience. It comes down out of the Pyrenees into Spain and across to Finisterre, what they used to call in the Middle Ages Finisterre, the end of the world, because that's where the world ended, where the ocean started. Yeah. Till the Vikings fixed them up, right? So it was fun. And speaking of fun, when we did those celebrations, like the Viking celebration for 2000, man, The world paid attention. CNN was here. They were all here. It really showcased the province in a beautiful way. So anyway, when I was in the Caribbean, the dean of the school came to me and said, you're a former politician from Canada. He's an American guy from Connecticut. Yes, I am, but don't tell anybody. I said,
you're just trying to get supper on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And he said, listen, could you help us with some immigration visa issues? You know, you've got connections, you can do some. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do a little bit of work for you. So he gave me a 3-month contract that lasted 8 years. And then I was headhunted by another school and I worked for them. And I now work for GUS Medical and Vet. GUS stands for Global University Systems. We're the largest private university group in the world. We own over 50 universities. Wow. Medical schools, engineering schools, University of Law in London, where the current mayor is one of our graduates. Many MPs have graduated from ours. And in the Caribbean, we have 3 medical schools, and I now run those for Canada.
Before I get, I want to talk about all that. I want to talk all about that specifically. But I want to just go back, and I'm so glad that you gave us such a detailed sort of journey to how you got there, because I think that builds on what you're about to tell us next. You're not some guy who set something up and you come with a great breadth of experience. You've seen a lot of things, you know how a lot of things work, not only in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, but in our country. So you're well set up to take this venture forward, right? Now tell me about this venture. Tell me, Gus, right from the beginning.
I will, so GUS, Global University Systems, was started by, the only expression I can tell you is that he's a visionary. His name is Aaron Edigan. He started this company 20 years ago in a basement in Trafalgar Square. And his vision was to change the paradigm of education globally. He dreamt big. He dreamt big. He was like the Disneys and the Microsoft of the world, except his field was education. And he had a big dream. And he chased that dream. So from that basement of 5 students, he now built a global empire in over 170 countries, 50 universities, private schools, multiple partnerships. We teach over 120,000 students a day in person, and our lifted up platform called Future Learn teaches 20 million every day around the world. But what I love about him and his company and his family vision and his motto is do it well, and give back. So one of the things we do is we give free education to children in Afghanistan. If you can reach a computer, we'll teach you free. We do it in the Ukraine. We've done a deal with the United Nations where we help Latin American companies. So it's a beautiful thing to work with a for-profit company that's conscious of its own human frailty and how we need to build humanity up together. And I think that family recognizes this, and they have a beautiful view of that. Doesn't mean they're not hard workers, doesn't mean they won't drive profit, doesn't mean they won't build they will. They want to build the best education empire in the world. And they've set about doing that. We're in Singapore, we're in Israel, we're in Latin America, we're in Germany, we're in London, we're in Canada. We own 8 universities and colleges right here in Canada. We just last week, I just came from opening the brand new University of Niagara Falls. Beautiful, state-of-the-art, AI, digital-driven, biomedical. Everything is wrapped in that university, and it's open to every student in the world. And by the way, that was the vision of our CEO, Cindy McLeod, who in her own right is a hurricane of thought and experience. She's just something else. She's award-winning. She's been around the world. She's built partnerships all over the world. She's extraordinary, and she's built GUS Canada up from the ground to a magnificent series of colleges and universities where we teach now nearly 40,000 students in this country. And the medical schools come under Cindy as well. They reside in the Caribbean, but they come under GUS Canada as well. 3 beautiful schools on 3 separate but equally beautiful islands. And we have about 7,000 doctors now practicing around the world. But what I love about it, and it really struck me when I came to this company, is that 50% of all of the students from around the world that come to us come from Canada. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But what's not beautiful is that when they go through all of their medical education, their 4 years, and then their clinical training in the US and Canada, 90% stay in the US. And it's because we don't work hard enough as a country to remove the barriers, to open pathways, to get them back, to entice them. They want to come home, but it's tough to get home. So one of the things I convinced our medical school leadership when I got there is, why don't we create a scholarship for Canadians to help offset the costs? Remember, going to a private medical school, when my wife went, she came out with $400,000 or $500,000 worth of debt, which we had to carry and pay back, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, to come to Saba University, it's about 300,000 Canadian dollars. So we now have instituted, and this is for every Newfoundlander and Labradorian who's ever dreamt of being a doctor, who put that dream away because capacity shut them down, right? Look at the demand. The demand worldwide, in Canada, in the United States, far outstrips the supply. We only have so many seats in medical schools. We have 17 medical schools, 3,000 seats, 23,000 applicants. And I'm saying to all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians tonight, if you want that dream, bring it back out. Take it out into the open. Let's help you finance that dream. And I did this by convincing our company to offer every Newfoundlander and Labradorian that wants to come $100,000 immediately as a grant.
Wow.
Right off the top, 100,000.
Huge.
Plus, we have academic scholarships to the tune of another 100,000. So you can get upwards of 200,000, which is 2/3 of your school paid for.
Right.
And then the Canada student loan backs in the rest.
Right.
So anybody who has that dream and got scared off because of cost, we have a solution for you, right? And this is what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Look, Canada in 4 years will need 78,000 doctors. The United States will need 130,000. The world needs 7 million.
Yeah.
You're saying
We are
Canada-
heading for a cliff.
So Canada only has 3,000 seats.
3,000 seats in 17 medical schools. And Premier Ford, to his credit, is opening up 2 new schools. But that still won't go anywhere near satisfying the demand, because what's happening to these physicians, they are very hard workers. People say they're fat cats, they're this, they're that. No, they're not. They're hard workers. They've gone to school for 15, 20 years in some cases to be experts in their field. We've swamped them with paperwork. We've killed them and burdened them with regulation. We've stripped back their salaries and their benefits, et cetera, through taxation and other areas. My family doctor tells me she can only see me for 15 minutes for one issue. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have time. Her overhead's too high. Her benefits are too low, right? And that's just the reality of what we're living with.
Yeah.
So when you have a capacity issue, 17 schools, 3,000 seats, 23,000 applicants, multiple schools, you got a problem. And then look at the CMA. They're saying 1,000 doctors a year are coming out, retiring. And then OMA tells us about the burnout rate. 40% of Ontario doctors are going to get out in 4 years. We have a tsunami coming at us, the likes of which we've never seen in this country. Mm-hmm. And we better start thinking, we better jump outside the box.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
We better start thinking differently.
Yeah.
I'm presenting a partial solution today that could put a little dent in it. Mm-hmm. We will take as many students as you want to give us, and we will put a lot of money on the table for those students. So come and check us out.
I mean, it's amazing.
3medschools.com. Very simple.
Chuck, you're right. I mean, we have to jump outside the box and look at solutions here. And the quicker acting, bureaucracies, in the case maybe it's Ontario is the first to jump. They will jump. They will jump at this and they'll find the solution because they have to. Talk to me about the selection.
By the way, can I just jump in there because you reminded me? We've put proposals to 9 provinces. Mm-hmm. And here's the proposal. God love her, my CEO, took a lot of heat from headquarters on this, but she stood the test of time and said, let's do it. I'm from Canada. This is our corporation. Let's put our money where our mouth is on these 3 med schools. Let's put the full force of these 3 medical schools behind Canada. So we offered 9 provinces that we would step up to the table and pay the full 50% of all tuition and fees. The government has to come and pay the balance through Canada student loan, by the way, no new money.
No.
A loan, to these students, and the student then gets to come to the medical school debt-free, but their skin in the game is they sign a contract to come back to Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, PEI, wherever, and give 5 years where they're asked to serve.
Right.
Now think about it. You're 24 years old, you're a doctor, you're debt-free. Why wouldn't you come and go to Fogo and Twillingate and Marystown and Labrador and Goose Bay and wherever?
And God
have
knows
a lot of fun. You're debt-free.
And God knows the life you will have. Who knows, right? You know what I mean?
And history shows that if you go to these communities, life gets in the way, you fall in love, you meet some friends, you join a hockey team, a lot of stuff happens, and suddenly you're part of that community.
The community embraces you and you embrace it.
And this is before 9 provinces. I'm about to make the 10th, Quebec soon. And we're saying to the governments, if you want our help, we're here. Consider us Canada's 18th medical school.
Right.
We're here to support you. We now train 50% Canadians anyway, so change the paradigm.
Right.
And the paradigm right now is that we have recruitment offices that chase them at the exit. And everybody's chasing them at the exit. You telling me the United States is not offering huge incentives, other provinces, that's a shark's feast. Get them at the entrance. Mm-hmm. You're coming in, that 400,000, boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
Now go enjoy your medical school.
Right.
And your return is to come home.
Yeah.
How tough is it to come home?
No, you're right.
Not tough at all.
Tell me about the admission requirements and all that for the medical school. Same as in...
It's the same as Harvard, same as every other medical school in the world.
Right.
Very high standards.
Yeah.
In fact, Saba, if you look at our flagship university, which is on the island of Saba, so you take a direct flight from Toronto to St. Martin, short boat ride to the great volcano of Saba. There's nothing there. We built a beautiful medical school there with no distractions.
Great place to learn.
It is a great place to learn, to hike, to snorkel, to learn, etc. Saba, by the way, is the 3 islands in the Dutch Antilles are called Saba, Saint Bonaire, and Saint Eustatia. All of those were designated 10 years ago municipalities of Holland. So even though the geography is in the Caribbean, the actual administrative stuff is in Holland.
Right.
So by virtue of that, Saba University School of Medicine is accredited by Holland, which puts us under the European umbrella, the same as any medical school in the world. So our kids can go work in the United States, Canada, or Europe, which is a wonderful thing to be able to say. And these profs are fantastic. We hire the best from all over the world. When you go in there, it's a small teacher-student ratio, usually 7 to 1, 10 to 1, very small. We nurture them, we guide them, we take them right through the journey till they say to us, I got a residency. I'm off to New York to do my residency. It's fantastic. And even then they come back and give back to us. It's just amazing. I'm doing a big webinar Wednesday night, and I've got a doc on from New York who works for Veterans Affairs for the American government. He's got such a great story to tell, right? But he couldn't get into an American medical school. He turned to us, fabulous academics, fabulous record, fabulous background, fabulous volunteering. Now he's a top doctor. The chief of medicine for the 3 largest hospitals in Toronto, Dr. Donjet Litt, who helped navigate them through COVID, Saba grad. Yeah. Couldn't get into U of T, couldn't get into MUN, couldn't get into Dalhousie. We took him, and he's a superstar, and I can give you 1,000 like him.
What does the sort of academic journey look like for a student when they arrive? How long are they on Saba?
So they come to the island, and they do what's called, some people refer to it as basic sciences, or the foundations of medicine. So they're on the island for 2 years.
Okay.
And that's where they do all the theoretical stuff, the book learning stuff, right? And we do same as Harvard. It's an organ-based curriculum. It used to be divided into subjects, but now it's the body, and it's all organ-based and interconnected. So we teach a very skilled way, similar as Harvard, Yale, all the Americans. Most people have moved to that system, the organ-based system. So they'll spend 2 years on the island, very quiet. Then they'll step out and write the very first set of exams, the United States medical exams. They're divided into 3 steps. Step 1. Step 1 is clinical knowledge. If you pass it, it's pass-fail. Off you go into your clinicals to one of our 50 hospitals around the United States.
These are relationships you have made with...
We've got partnerships with great hospitals and schools and med schools across the United States. And there they can do what's called their core rotations. They're into the clinical settings. They're in surgeries, they're in psychiatry, internal medicine, etc. And then your fourth year is when you start turning.
One whole year of that?
Yep, one whole year of that in the U.S.
In the U.S.
Then you turn your attention to what are called electives. What do I want to elect to study to try to aim residency for? So in my wife's case, she wanted neurology. So she did neurology here at Memorial, her elective, one in Saskatchewan, one in Ontario, etc. So she was building the case for neurology for her letters of reference, etc. So yeah, now we just signed 12 sites in Ontario where you can come back if you're a Canadian and do your electives in Ontario, which is beautiful, right? So 2 years on the island, one in the United States, and back to Canada.
It's
and
a global experience.
It's a great experience.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting an experience along with an education and,
100%.
you know,
Yeah.
wow. And so then upon graduation, what does life look like for them then?
So Premier Furey just spoke at our graduation in Rhode Island in front of 300 of our graduates. They've all matched. So our match rates, which is really important to
Explain the match to our guests.
Yeah, so the match means I finished my medical school. I now go into, it's almost like a speed dating thing where you go and do interviews with hospitals across the country. In Canada, it's done under CARMS. So my wife went into the CARMS match. She ranks her list, right? And then the people who've interviewed her rank her. And then the algorithm finds each other. So Ottawa found her, she found Ottawa. By the way, that algorithm was developed by a Nobel Prize winner from Canada, and it's used worldwide. Same in the United States. And the beautiful part about our kids is they can go into both matches. So if you go into the Canadian match and you don't match because there's only 400 seats,
Right.
you automatically fall into the US net,
wow.
where there are 10,000 seats.
Wow.
Right? Now, our match rates consistently have been 96% for Medical University of the Americas, 97% for St. Matthews, and 98% for SABA.
Meaning that what they want, they get.
They get. Yeah, it's quite something. It's quite remarkable, actually.
Chuck,
And
you're
so when
very
they finish their Jerry, when they finish their practice ready. So they finish their medical degree, go into their residency, where they're paid handsomely, by the way, in the U.S. especially.
Especially,
So they do the 2 or 3 years or whatever the residency is, depending upon the specialty, and then they can call their shot wherever they want to go.
Start life.
Wherever they want to go in the world.
You're very
Sorry,
passionate about this, it's obvious. And I mean, you've had personal experience with it.
I have. I watched my wife do it. I watched the long hours. I watched her suffer. I watched her cry. I watched her laugh. I watched her be happy. I watched her do all those exams. I watched her study. I watched her, and when she goes at it, she's a Northern Peninsula girl. She goes at it. She's getting it done right, and she did. Yeah, I'm passionate because I saw what her journey was. I saw the potential. I see the potential journey right now for kids that can't get into Canadian medical schools, and we have an answer. Yeah. We have a solution. We have a checkbook, and we have a path. So why not jump in? Why not do it? Who doesn't want to be in Cayman Islands in the middle of February? By the way, one of our top performers at St. Matthews in Cayman Island right now is from St. John's. She was a nurse. She transferred to medicine, didn't get into Memorial, came to us, is now doing her clinical rotations in the U.S., and she is a rock star. Oh, trust me, she's what a doctor.
I mean, you're describing...
Right from here.
Yeah, you're describing an incredible solution, not only like for the students individually, but what you're offering to the provinces. That's unbelievable, right? I mean...
You know, I tell you, Ellen, when I think about it, there's a great phrase. The problem is that there's not enough Canadian doctors in the world. That's not the problem. We got thousands of Canadian doctors in the world. The problem is there's not enough Canadian doctors in Canada.
Yeah.
Because we drive them away.
Yeah.
We're not receptive. We're not open arms. We're not welcoming. And we have to change that mentality.
Yeah.
And change it fast, right? And so these 3 schools are wide open to any kid in Canada who wants to come. And we will create a pathway, and we'll leave no stone unturned to get them in and get them on the right path to become very good doctors, to realize and flourish in the dream they've always had, you know?
You know, I love the way you describe that, Chuck, because what you're describing is you're looking at dropping every barrier to entry, whereas traditionally the medical schools are putting up every barrier to entry, right? This is a complete reversal.
And,
right?
and Alan, the other thing I want to say is we're not in competition with Canadian medical schools.
Oh, you just- yeah.
We hold them in the highest
Yeah.
regard. We think that they're producing excellent, competent, wonderful doctors. It's just capacity.
Yeah, 100%.
They're stuck at capacity. That's revenue. That's
Yeah.
cost. So we like to say we're not in competition with MUN. We want to complement the great work you're doing. If you produce 80 doctors, let us produce 80 doctors. Now you have 160 doctors coming to Newfoundland, guaranteed.
And this network that you describe of the relationships that you have with universities around the globe, I mean, that's fascinating when you think about the web that you've built from a global perspective.
It is, and I just got back from Dubai, where Cindy, our CEO, and I just signed a beautiful agreement with the Canadian University of Dubai. And I don't know if you know about Canadian University of Dubai, but this particular professor, PhD, Dr. Chelly, had the foresight to convince the Ontario government to transfer the Ontario curriculum for university into Dubai. So any Middle Eastern student comes through, gets a Canadian degree, and can come to Canada then for postgraduate work. So we just signed a magnificent agreement with them for their health sciences, creating a pathway into Seba University School of Medicine out of the Middle East. And he's opening the Canadian University of Malaysia, Canadian University of Algeria, and the Canadian University of Colombo in Sri Lanka. We hope to go there and sign all those deals as well.
Wow. Chuck, I mean, it sounds like it's a, first of all, incredible journey to get to where you are.
Yeah.
You watched your wife go through it. You're intimate with the process. You understand it. You're offering back to your country solutions.
Yep.
Now they just got to, in many respects, get out of their own way, right? Because it's not necessarily the leadership, I'm sure, of the provinces want to see this.
Yeah.
You got to get through the bureaucratic process, not only on their own side of the government, but the healthcare side too, and the regulation. But it will come. It'll come because there's just not capacity to do it.
And you know, look, coming from government, I understand
Yeah.
their fears and their anxieties. And will we disrupt the med school? Will we hurt somebody's feelings? We don't have time for that.
No.
That time was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We are at such a crisis now that if we don't move, it's going to be very tragic, seriously tragic. What I'm saying, give me 100 Newfoundlanders, give me 100 Nova Scotians, give me 100 PEIers, give me 100 New Brunswickers, get them into our school, let's get them out in 5 years.
Yeah.
You've got them then. Debt free, happy to come home because that's where they're from and that's what they love. And they can start earning their salaries immediately with no paybacks on loans, interest, etc.
And when people come to work that way, without the burden of all that on their shoulders, they're ready to go to work. And if they
And the
come,
burden of studying with all that on your shoulders.
Right.
We have kids that say to us halfway through, I'm running out of money.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Right.
Well, that kid that I just talked to you about from Newfoundland or PER,
Yep.
that never answers the equation.
So they're coming with that. They're coming with a global experience, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they've
very
learned
much so,
different,
very
right? So
much so.
everything is sort of right
Yeah.
when they come to you. So the probability of success and staying in that community and being a vital part of it, and it's all set up for success, right?
It truly is. And you know, I don't know if you realize this, but it shocked me when I found out 31% of all current doctors right now practicing in Canada are international medical graduates, IMGs. Many of them Canadians who found their way back through hook or by crook, right?
Yeah.
But found their way back. It's interesting to me that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm saying we have 3 med schools. We can train doctors for you. And guess what? 50% of the ones we're training now and have been for 30 years are Canadian. Look at this kid from Nova Scotia, from Halifax. I just found out about him yesterday. His father, Dr. Butler in Nova Scotia, couldn't get him into Dal, couldn't get him into MUN, couldn't get him in anywhere. He came to Seba. His father was telling me the other day he was just named the chief medical officer for oncology and hematology for Sloan Kettering, the biggest cancer center in Dallas, Texas. So did we do something right in the foundations? I think we did. Right?
Yeah.
Look at Kentville, Nova Scotia, that little community of 15,000 people, beautiful community. 8, count them, 8 of their current doctors are Seba grads.
Wow.
Chief of urology, chief of anesthesiology, chief of family medicine, in that little community.
Clearly it's working.
Take them away and you've got a collapsed system, right?
Clearly it's working. Yeah.
It is working. It is working. We just had a young girl from Medical University of the Americas match here in psychiatry a couple of months ago. She's at MUN now doing her 5-year psychiatry program. I hope she'll stay.
Chuck,
But if we had paid for her,
Yeah.
she will stay because she has to stay, right?
Chuck, we always ask people that come on the podcast for a piece of advice. So, you know, everybody we have on they've had interesting journeys.
Yeah,
They've come from wonderful places and got to the place they are now. And it's a tough question to ask them to distill it down to a piece of advice. But what would that piece of advice be? For a guy like you, you've lived life well. You've lived life. It was incredible, your journey.
Yeah, and I hope it continues for a while.
And it will.
Yeah, God willing, you know, that I'm healthy and can continue. But yeah, so my wife wrote a book with 3 other doctors, her girlfriends, who all went through the Caribbean. It's a beautiful book. It's on Amazon, by the way. It's called In the Jungle of Medicine. Because they'd studied medicine in the jungle, in Dominica, where they filmed Pirates of the Caribbean. You drive up through the jungle, and right in the middle of Portsmouth, there's this magnificent, high-tech, beautiful, state-of-the-art medical school. It's just brilliant, right? And in her book, she gives a really golden nugget of advice. And that is, you know, we can be frightened all our lives. Fear can take us over. Or we can actually dare to go out and do it. And her phrase is, jump. The net will catch you. And so I say, as she would say, jump. The net will catch you. It catches you every time.
Gerry, your thoughts?
Well, you know what, Chuck, you're an absolute wealth of information. I've sat here, said very little because I didn't know a lot of the statistics that you've talked about. But I think the most important thing that I could do is say thank you for your service to this province.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Gerry. Thank you. Great to see you, Alan.
Thanks, Chuck. You know, I can't help but think what great solutions you're presenting. Now it's just a matter of us to reach out and figure out how do we get it. The other thing I want to point out is that I love how you say to people that thought that dream might have disappeared because they weren't matched, they didn't get in somewhere. It doesn't have to end. The money. Yeah. It doesn't have to end. Rekindle that
dream back
right?
out
Rekindle it because there's an option, and I would argue it's a pretty good option. Yeah. It's an option that will not only give them their education that they need, but it's going to give them the experience of a lifetime. You know, that they might even write a book with some of their classmates.
That's
right?
True. Absolutely.
You know, you're going to make relationships in a different way that you never would have thought. Chuck, I got to tell you.
You know, it's almost like, Alan, their dream is like putting a candle away in the dark.
Yeah.
And I'm saying there's so many options to explore. Take that candle out into the light of day and shine your best and be your best and go be that doctor. You deserve it.
Yeah. Well, Chuck, listen, look, from teaching kids out there on the West Coast to then representing that great part of our province and serving in ministries and driving our province towards the success that we see today, because all of those decisions that you made back then lead us to where we are now. And I tell you, the future's bright for this place.
Future's
right?
very bright. Yeah.
Future's bright for this place. That didn't happen by accident. It happened with a lot of people like you putting foundations in place. So as Gerry would say, thank you for your service and thanks for being on Gale Force Wins.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure and a lot of fun. Great to see you both.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.